Hey guys, this is Mike Mahaffey, the old bastard BJJ guy, here for BJJ Mental Models. Back in my day, we had to walk uphill in the snow both ways to get to the academy just to learn some crappy technique from a random purple belt. You kids have it so easy because now you can just subscribe to BJJ Mental Models Premium and get tons of great audio courses to learn new techniques, enhance your mindset, and entertain yourself. You can even get personalized rolling reviews from some of your favorite BJJ Mental Models coaches, including me. It's like having your own seminar, you spoiled little whippersnappers. So what are you waiting for? Subscribe to BJJ Mental Models Premium right now, get off my lawn, and go train.
Hey, welcome to BJJ Mental Models, episode 319. I'm Steve Kwan. BJJ Mental Models is your guide to a conceptual and intelligent jiu-jitsu approach. And today, we got one for the gym owners and prospective gym owners out there, because I got Eliot Marshall here. Eliot, how's it going, sir?
I'm good, Steve. How are you, man? Thanks for making some time for me.
Thank you for making time for me, man. You've been on the show before quite a while ago. We had an awesome chat about the journey towards teaching. And this is something that, you know, the more that I talk to you about, the more I've kind of come to appreciate your perspective on this. And you're a fascinating success story in how to do this at scale. But this is probably all better suited coming from you than from me. So why don't you just give yourself a quick intro and a shout out here?
Yeah, so I started my martial arts journey when I was 6 years old doing Tang Sudo, Subakdo karate. When I did that all the way up until the time I was about 17, 18 years old. At the end of that journey, my instructor and a couple of the guys that were doing, Subakdo had started jiu-jitsu. They showed me a little bit right before I went out to college, a couple months worth. I go out to college, I meet Amal Easton, I clean the academy and trade for tuition as I, go on this journey of being a fighter. First jiu-jitsu fighter, then MMA fighter, get on the Ultimate Fighter, fight in the UFC, not the world champion, didn't make a lot of money, but it's all I know. So what's next? You open school. That's what you know. Do that with Amal Easton and we blow it up. We blow it up with our staff, with our crew. And, this is the super short version. And to the point now where we have 8 schools, 200 and let's just call it 200 some odd employees, about 4,000 members. And I have a great family, great kids, own a basketball program now. So that is a shit show, but that's a whole other podcast, not BJJ related. And yeah, man, like this journey, and I'm super into this journey of martial arts academies, of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academies, because I think we can just do better. Like I really do.
Yeah, and I'd love to take this time today to get some of your thoughts and advice on how to do this, because you touched on this briefly. Easton is a massive success story in the jiu-jitsu space. I think when many gym owners think about, hey, I'm going to start an academy, to pay the bills, they're probably thinking that success would look like I've got a small academy, maybe 100 or 200 students, I can feed my family, but it's not like the path to wealth or riches or tremendous success. It's basically a way to tread water financially and justify a jiu-jitsu lifestyle. But I think that's a very limiting mindset. And I think that you're a great example of someone who's been able to scale well beyond that. And I'd love to maybe get some of your thoughts and lessons on how you've done that and kind of what that journey looks like. I would say, and you tell me if you think I'm wrong here, there's a few mindset shifts that are going to happen on this road, right? One is at some point, everyone who wants to do jiu-jitsu professionally is going to realize I can't just be an individual athlete and pay the bills. Like the odds of you being able to fund a good lifestyle just by doing competitive jiu-jitsu are pretty small. And even if you are able to do that, you're not going to be able to do that till you're 60 years old, right? And so then the question becomes, how do I expand beyond that? How do I become a business owner? But I think then at some point, there's the possibility of another level up, which is where you realize I could turn this into less of just a room full of grapplers and more into a legit business, like a machine that makes money, that creates jobs, that benefits people at the order of thousands. And that's something that I think you're uniquely qualified to talk about. But I'll turn it back to you to maybe pick up the ball there.
Look, maybe this is going to sound shitty, okay? I want to massively help people. And I think these two things can exist. Massively. I love helping people. Love it. Love it. It's why I do what I do. And I want to be rich. I like it. I like to do what I want with my life. I like to not be told what to do. I like to not have a boss. I'm going, like I told you offline, I'm going to Maui on Friday. I'll be home for 3 weeks and then I'm going back for Christmas. And I was just there in September for my wife's birthday. I own real estate. Our companies employ 200 people, like I just said, and we change their lives. I have a nonprofit. We have 2 of them, actually. I have 3 kids in college that are not my children that I pay for. So I think all of this can exist, right? Like you can do really, really good in the world and you can make a lot of money. And you have to have that mindset. If you don't have that mindset, like for me, you get into this like, oh, instructors should be poor. And you know that mindset that I'm talking about, right, Steve? That like being rich and doing well is bad because that means you're just taking people's money. No, it means I'm giving the best product possible. That's how I see it. The only way anybody parts with their money is if they think it's fucking worth it. So my academies, they better be amazing, 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 amazing jiu-jitsu academies and have a great culture and a great place for people to be with a great curriculum. And you better be able to have, I don't know when this is going to air, but you better have some people like Anna Adormo who just smashed at main character over the weekend. You can do all of it. There's no limits. Like fears are often just an illusion in your mind.
Yeah, great explanation, man. And you touched on something there that I think is very common in jiu-jitsu, which is just this feeling that, like with a lot of other, I guess, artistic initiatives, there's sometimes an expectation that we should be starving for the art, and that if you're trying to make money off of it, it's a bad thing or some sort of weakness of character. I mean, you know my coach, Emily, right? And Emily has spoken tremendously about her frustration on this and how it can be very difficult sometimes to interact with people in the jiu-jitsu space because everything is about scarcity. Like, how can we stink bit everyone? How can we get costs down? But there's not a lot of thought about how can we grow this thing. And the problem is when we all entrench and try to get our piece of the pie and keep it for ourselves and not make the pie bigger, it perpetuates this cycle of like a constant race to the bottom in jiu-jitsu where it's all about how can we keep everything cheap. And of course, this is it's a trade-off because on one hand, of course, we want to provide this service to people from all walks of life. But on the other hand, we also need to fund this, right? At the end of the day, to be a successful business, you have to have money coming in. You can't just be starving yourself for the benefit of the business, which I think is another mistake many people make when they're kicking this off, is they don't think about like, how can I pay myself, right? That's so important when you're building up anything.
What do you want your life to look like? When you first start working with us, and we'll get into this. We have 2 programs, one to get you to 100 members, then one for after that. When you first start, once we get you to 100, or if you're already at 100, what do you want your life to look like, man? Like, what do you want? What makes you happy? Do you know any of this stuff? Do you know what your values are? Can you state your personal values? Can you state what you would like your day to look like? These are just really, really important questions. Or you end up in a fucked situation, possibly. And I know Joe Rogan's very popular in the jiu-jitsu space. And I know right now, the right is loving him and the left is hating him. But I agree with a comment that he says, I think most men live lives of quiet desperation. Like, I'm neutral on Joe Rogan. I think he is vastly mischaracterized. But I agree with that. And it's because we're not asking these really, really simple questions when we open our jiu-jitsu academies of like, what do I want to do every day? I think it's really important. It's a great question. What do you want to do every day?
Now, let's talk about this core values thing here, because something that you once said, I think it was on this podcast, actually, you said, you have to have core values, and you define that as what are you willing to lose friends and money over? And I think that's a very powerful way to define this, right? Because when people talk about core values, often they think of, the corporate shit that people put up on the wall at a business, and it's all just talk and fluff, and no one really follows that or makes decisions based on that. It's just a feel-good kind of whitewashing of the company. But something that you talked about is thinking about what am I willing to lose here by my core values? How do I define what I really stand for, and what am I willing to sacrifice in order to keep those? Because I think that's the true line of what a core value is, right? If something is really a core value that you believe in, you should be willing to walk away from relationships and opportunities over that core value. So, for me, I think that this is tremendously important to think about. It sounds very fluffy. And a lot of people, when they're starting off their business or their gym, they're going to think, oh, who cares about that? I'm just providing jiu-jitsu service. But the problem is there will come a day where your core values are tested. You're not going to want it to happen. But the more that you've thought about this in advance, the easier it will be for you to make, I think, the right decision when that does happen. I'll turn this over to you, though, because I know that this is something that you've spoken quite a bit about.
You don't wish-wash on your decisions. It's not like yes for one person and no for the other on the same thing, on like a similar action. Like the most basic, and which I think is the worst one in all jiu-jitsu academies, is the instructor sleeping with the students. That's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And I'm not saying people don't have relationships in our schools, but just like an instructor, one student to the next student is what I'm talking about here, right? And then you treat it differently from, instructor A, Eliot versus Steve, and we're both instructors at the same school. Well, you have no values. You have no core values. They're not. So it just walk it back simpler to your life. What are your values? Integrity, strength, honor, loyalty, and growth. Done. That's what I do. It's literally this is all I focus on for my life. How do I do that? I do that with my principles. I teach. I do that with my I ams. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a teacher, I'm a student, I'm a fighter, I'm a survivor. This is Eliot's life. These are my values. These are my principles. This is who I am. And I just go from there. I don't step out of those lanes. Just don't, because I'm not very good at them. I have zero passion around them. And then I just follow my values based on those things. It's just, you do the same thing with your business. You got to get really, really clear on what it is you fucking stand for. Like, what do you stand for? Why are you here? Okay, great. Easton, we just added one actually. We used to be the ETCs, which made really sense for Easton Training Centers, but then we added adaptability. So obviously our most recent one is adaptability, excellence, trust, compassion, and stewardship. And that's just how we move. And we mess up all the time. Everyone thinks that like this core value thing goes on your wall and you never fuck them up. I'll be super honest. We're bumping into excellence right now. Our business is excellent. We need better competitors. So, we're making this big push. We're going to be like, okay, we're going to bump on the competitor end because we're not producing excellent competitors at the adult level. So that's just, it's not like I mess up as a dad all the time. I say some stupid shit to my wife. Okay, hold on, back up. Not all the time, right? It happens, right? You're not perfect. We're not asking you to be perfect. And that's where everyone thinks like these core values things are this like woke bullshit. And it can be. It definitely can be because it can seem like you're like, oh, I'm better than you because I have values. No, man, your values keep you in check. That's what they do. They don't keep other people in check. They keep me in check. They keep our schools in check. I'm not out here preaching that my values have to be your values. These are my values. I'm not, but that's my choice. That's my life and they're our schools. And we agreed upon these values. If you don't like it, that is totally fine, Steve. Do your fucking thing somewhere else.
Let me ask you something here. I think many people, when they're beginning this journey towards, look, I want to build up some way to monetize jiu-jitsu and live this as a lifestyle. People are probably going to think, well, the first thing I need to know is I want to get advice on sales funnels or marketing or how to build a website or how to structure a class. And what you're saying here is that before any of that, you have to identify values. And like you mentioned, a lot of people might look at that and say, what is this touchy-feely stuff? Like, why do I need to focus on that? And I would say, what are the consequences of not doing this? If someone said, look, values, that's just something you put on the wall. I'm focused on the machine, like how I do sales, how I run a class. What do you say to those people who put that first instead of worrying about stuff like values?
Your machine will always break. And when your machine breaks, when your sales breaks, when your salespeople start not doing what they're supposed to be doing, when you run into problems, okay, it will always come back to who you are and what you stand for when it really gets ugly, right? Not like, you got to fire. Not like your salesperson didn't show up to work today. Yeah, that's fucking simple. They didn't show up the last 3 days. They're fired. Okay. But like when COVID hits and you have a school, for us, for example, I'll just give you an example. You have a school in Castle Rock, which is as red could be. And then you have a school in Boulder, which is as blue can be. And you have to figure this out for both of them. It's going to come down to your values and what you stand for. Okay, we're going to take care of both people, right? How do we move through this with both people? How do we talk to people in a compassionate way?
I think that's a really important point because a problem that so many gyms encounter, like you said, the tricky situations are not going to be the ones like someone doesn't show up to work. The solution there is clear and obvious, but there will be times when something happens. Again, you talked about the pandemic, sometimes out of your control. And the more that you've thought about how you would respond to that in advance, the easier it is to make the right decision on the spot. I've said before, you see these gyms that get embroiled in terrible situations and the head coach makes a bad decision in terms of how they respond. And I always see this, and a part of me thinks like, how could you do that? If something awful happens at your gym, how could you take this clearly incorrect action? And I think part of it a lot of the time is that people just got blindsided by this. They didn't think about their values and what they really believe in first and foremost, and they didn't make that personal commitment to be willing to walk away from something that crosses the line.
It's an afterthought to them because something bad is going to happen at your gym. It's not if something bad's going to happen. Everyone listening, I have 4,000 members. We have 4,000 members across Easton. We have 220 employees. How often do you think something bad happens?
I'm going to guess it's a weekly occurrence.
I'm going to guess it's a fucking daily occurrence.
Yeah. Makes sense, man.
It's a daily occurrence. Some bullshit happens every single day. Think about all those people we have to deal with. Every day something happens, if not multiple times a day, because they're across 8 schools. So we have to be ready for this. You have to do this. And look, this exercise doesn't take long. It takes a week, 2 weeks. It doesn't take long. So if you're opening a school, if you already have a school, put some focus on this. Put some focus on what it is you stand for, who it is you are, and what are your values. Okay? That's the second thing you do. Because remember, the first thing you do is what do you want your life to look like? Okay? Because you got to have that. Do I really want to do this? What does that look like? And then once you do that, it's all about everything else. Okay? It's all about everything else. The sales, the marketing, the product, and the culture. And there's 4 areas of the business. Okay, I'm going to say them again. Sales, marketing, product, and culture. Those are your areas. Most people, most schools think they have a marketing problem. I don't get enough leads. And this is just absolute total bullshit. Most likely in 95% of the people that we've worked with over the last 3 years, they have a sales problem, a culture problem, or a product problem. And man, oh man, do they really, really, really hate to hear they have a product problem.
Well, this is a great segue here because I wanted to ask you, once you get past that first step of defining your vision for your life and your values, how do you actually start tactically making this happen and building up a gym? Let's talk about each of those 4 avenues. And I'm specifically interested in hearing what you're talking about regarding marketing, because so many gyms have told me the same thing, which is if only we could get more leads in the door, everything would be working perfectly. And I would love to hear how you challenge that and why you believe that that's not necessarily true.
Every single person's number one way that they get leads in the door is word of mouth. And everyone thinks it's like Google or Facebook ads or yada, yada, or some bullshit, right? It's not. It's word of mouth. And you have to you have to have Google ads. 1,000,000%. You have to be on Google. Okay. And the reason everyone thinks that it's over the internet that most people hear about you and come through your door is because that is how the lead comes in. Steve, if I tell you about this really great, let's pretend we are both into axe throwing. Okay. You and I. Okay. We're into axe throwing and we're sitting around, Steve. We're at Paul's black belt ceremony. And I tell you about this really, really great place up in Canada, in Vancouver, axe throwing place that I went to. When I tell you about that, right, we're in Atlanta, you go home, you want to go axe throwing. The first thing you're going to do is go what? On the what? You're going to go to the internet though, right? And you're going to look. And then you're going to submit hey, I'm interested in axe throwing, correct?
Of course.
And then to them, that's going to look like an internet lead. But it's not an internet lead. That lead, sure, they clicked on a button on the internet, but that's a word of mouth lead. You have to understand this. Most people hear about your academy from someone else. They might even Google Easton, and then we come up. And then they might even click because they don't even know. And then you're running paid ads, and then they might even click on my paid ad that cost me money, even though my buddy told them about them. And then they fill out the lead box. And everything says internet ad, but that's just not true.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. It kind of jives with my experience as well. Like you said, you need to have a website because that's ultimately where people are probably going to find and intake into your system. But word of mouth is so much more powerful than just blasting out on Facebook ads. The level of engagement you get from someone who is told from a friend to come to this place is so much higher. I mean, from our premium service, the vast majority of people who sign up, they're probably aware of BJJ Mental Models, but it's often because a friend told them about it and kind of gave that endorsement or blessing. And so we often find that we get like clusters of people where one person will sign up and then 10 of their friends will sign up as well. And I presume it's the same for a gym owner.
Yeah. 1, I would say it's more like you get a friend to sign up, but that's okay. So 1, that's marketing. 2, you mentioned website. Most people's website is not skillful. And the reason that their website isn't good is because it talks about how great they are. Guess what? No one cares. In Colorado, Steve, okay, let's just go in Colorado, in both the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA space. How many people do you think have accomplished what I have accomplished? Go find me another 4-time Pan American champion, fight to win champion, UFC fighter. Go find me one. Go find me a bronze medalist at the World Championships. That also now fought in the UFC in Colorado. Go ahead, give it a look. Go to our website. go to Easton and try to find that about me. Give it a try. See if you can find any of that information. I have a great shiny belt in my background, right? You loved it. Yeah? Go ahead. Go try to find that on our website. You can't.
Now, this I want to unpack from you, because every person who's trying to start a jiu-jitsu gym, one of the first things they're going to think of is, how can I market this and make this look impressive? They're going to think of, what was my record? What did I do individually as a contributor? And they're going to probably pepper their website with all of that. And I agree with you that it really isn't going to be persuasive, but I would like to get your perspective on why that is. I mean, if you've got this incredible competition record, what is the benefit to kind of pulling that off your website and not advertising the one thing that you think would really make you stand out?
Can we just go to a different industry?
Absolutely.
I'm going to do it with a different industry. You and I are sitting at Paul's again, okay? But we're there the day before his black belt ceremony, and we're hungry. We get on Yelp or Google or whatever, and we pull up a restaurant. We decide, what kind of food you want to go eat, Steve?
Burgers.
Burgers. Fuck yeah, let's go get some burgers, okay? We pull up a website. We find a list of 10 websites on Yelp. After you get on the website, we're on each website, what's the first button you click?
Menu.
Why?
Because I want a burger.
And you want to see what kind of burgers they have. I want wings to go with my burger. So we need to see if they have what?
Burgers and wings.
And some fries, right? And maybe a milkshake, okay? But hold on. You didn't check to see if it was a Michelin star chef? You didn't see where he trained? You didn't see all the Chopped episodes that he won? Why not?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because the website's about me, dog. It's about what I want as the customer. So my website has to show what the customer wants. So I have to understand who my customer is. Who's my customer? 35 years old. 35 years old and 20-year-olds, okay? But mostly 35-year-old males that are married, 2.5 kids, make $150,000 a year, college educated, drive a nice car, wife works. Like, this is who my avatar is. But I also did just tell you that my best student who just won main character was female and like 22. So like that exists too. But who's my marketing towards? It's towards those people. So when you go on my website, you see those people doing what? What you as the consumer say you want to do. Jiu-jitsu, training, having fun, right? Not my belt, not me fighting in the UFC, not two people punching each other in the face, not jack dudes with their shirts off, kicking each other in the head. That might happen too at my school, but guess fucking what? I'm not advertising that, because who wants to do that? Who wants to get kicked in the head by some fucking jack dude with their shirt off?
Yeah, absolutely, man. This is something that I remember back in my early days when I started jiu-jitsu. I remember walking into a gym and getting the whole sales pitch about, here is our lineage and here is our IBJJF competition record. And I remember thinking, like, I don't know what the fuck any of this means, and I don't care. I came here because this was the most convenient gym for me based on location, right? Like, I just want to learn this martial art. I don't even have the context yet to know what a Gracie is or why that's important. And so it felt to me very much like I was being talked to from the perspective of my instructor and what they wanted. And I was just this new person walking in off the street. I didn't find it that persuasive. I had already at that point made the decision, I'm just going to give this a go. But if I were more on the fence, I probably would have walked away or tried somewhere else.
They almost tried to convince you not to come, right? And that's what most of us do, is we convince people not to stay at our schools because, one, our website sucks.
When you say the website sucks, I love this conversation because this is my background, is web stuff. But what do you mean when you say the website sucks? Do you mean like the look and feel of it or the content or some combination of the two?
Both the look and feel and the content. I wish I could show you my website right now. It's one, the look and feel. It's got to be friendly. It's got to be like, oh, I could do this. I'm a 35-year-old dad and I can do this, right? Because we know that's who our avatar is. Okay. That's who the person that we're trying to attract is. So make them feel like they can do it. Two, web shit, right? If somebody can't get what they want on your website, how long will they stay?
It's a moving target because it depends changing on like what people's attention spans are like in the moment. But I am going to guess, and it's been a few years since I've looked at this, I'm going to guess it's getting shorter and shorter. The last time I took a look at the number, it was something like 10 seconds, and that was years ago. I'm going to guess that now probably it's closer to 2.
Yeah, it's 2 seconds. It's 2.3 seconds.
Good guess.
Yeah, great guess. So the next thing that people mess up is they don't have a button on their website that consumer can't get away from. No matter where you scroll on our website, no matter where you scroll, it says, get a free class right in front of you. You click it, a box pops up, fill out your information. Not request more information, not schedule, not like get more info or any of that nonsense. Get your free class, because that's what you want, Steve. You want a free class, dog, right? You want to come try it and see what's up. I want a burger. How can I get my burger when you and I go out to eat, right? That's the next thing that people mess up. And that's all marketing. That's marketing.
Yeah. And the nice thing too, I mean, man, I remember the days when having a really nice looking website was a very expensive and time consuming endeavor. It used to be the case that, look, if you wanted a world-class looking website, easy 5-figure spend just to get something out the door. But that is so much different now. I mean, you've got sites that will just out of the box give you a beautiful website. I mean, I use Kajabi. I know that you're a fan of that as well. And it's so easy for a non-technical person to just make something really nice there. So there really is no excuse for not having a good website anymore, because it's more accessible than it's ever been. And that doesn't even get into, like you said, the content that you put on the website, because that's something that is purely within the control of the business owner. And I always encourage people to try to do some testing, take that website and put that in front of people who aren't in the jiu-jitsu bubble. Because make no mistake, right? I mean, you would agree, I'm sure, we live in a bubble here. People who have been training jiu-jitsu for years have a vastly different perspective of the sport versus people who are just discovering it for the first time. And we often forget how this sport can be perceived to someone who's never seen this before. You brought up great examples of like the dudes ripping their shirts off and screaming because they just won a gold medal. That is not persuasive to the majority of people who will make up your customer base unless you are specifically trying to build a competition gym, which is usually pretty hard to do, right? You're losing most of the potential customers out there.
You better be a champion. You better have created some fucking champions if you're trying to build a competition gym, because why would anybody come to you? And that's like none of us.
Well, that's something that I actually specifically want to ask you, because I mean, let's be honest. Like, one of the cool things that I found about jiu-jitsu is the majority of people who have built really successful gyms, it's not always the same people who were the top competitors. A lot of the biggest and most successful gyms that I have seen are run by just regular folks. Whereas a lot of the top competitors that I know never really were able to put it together in terms of having a business that they could kind of spin up and that would thrive on its own. And so this creates a bit of a marketing challenge for people, because if someone wants to start a gym and they think, but I'm just a guy or a girl, there's nothing unique about me. I haven't won anything. I don't have that much experience. Maybe I got a black belt, but I'm not famous for anything. How does a person like that create a message that's still going to resonate when there could be a dozen other alternatives that people could train at down the street?
You get people to walk in the door with what we're talking about. You have a good website, because you know that 90% of the people aren't going to. You have a sales funnel, which is as soon as you have a good website and they click on the button and they fill out their information, we'll talk about that next. You have a process of a sales funnel of how to get that person into your school, because you know that the champion thinks that people are just going to come to their school because they're champions. And that we just know that's not true. That is just literally not true. Like 100%. Alistair Overeem used to train at my school. You know how many fucking people came in because Alistair Overeem actually signed up?
I'm going to guess not many.
2. And they stayed for a month.
Yep. That makes sense. It's kind of more like a celebrity meet and greet at that point.
Yeah, they want to see Alistair Overeem and they think they want to do it. And then when they realize they can't be Alistair Overeem and this is going to be really, really fucking hard, they quit.
Now, let's talk about that sales funnel then, because this is another area where so many people, I think, drop the ball. And you touched on this earlier. I feel like a lot of jiu-jitsu people have this, if you build it, they will come mindset, like Field of Dreams, where they think, hey, if I just make the gym, and it's a good gym, the quality of the product will speak for itself, and I will just have this steady intake of people just walking in the door. But that absolutely does not happen in the real world, especially not in the year we're in, where there is just an embarrassment of content out there. It is so hard to stand out. If you were back in the 90s, I mean, granted, the interest in jiu-jitsu was much smaller, but at least then, if you opened a gym, you could make an argument that, okay, there's some uniqueness here. There probably isn't another jiu-jitsu gym within 100 miles. That is not the case now. It's not even just about being a good gym. It's about getting people's attention so that they even come into the funnel in the first place.
Well, hold on. That's marketing though, right? That's marketing. I'm going to burst everyone's bubble here maybe. To finish up with marketing, it's done on Google. It is not done on Facebook, right? So if you're paying a ton in Facebook ads and all that nonsense, for our company, Easton Online, we definitely use social media ads. For Easton, the schools, we barely touch social media, because Steve, when you go to Texas and you want to find a school, where do you go? You go on Google and you go, what? Jiu-Jitsu near me. And then right? But you don't go on Facebook, do you? Do you go on Instagram to find a school in Texas?
No, I go on Instagram for my entertainment and to see people that I know.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So nobody goes on Instagram or Facebook to go to find a school. They go on Google. So almost all of the work needs to be done on Google to close out marketing. But let's say you have their attention now and they filled out that box on your page. The next thing is the funnel. What will separate you from the champion down the street, most likely, 95% of the times, I will say, is that you actually have a system in which you follow up with people. What's the cadence? What do you say? What are the manners of doing it? How do you make sure that your staff or you won't forget to do it? And you have to have a CRM or something like a CRM, customer relations management software, that says, hey, Eliot, these are the 10 leads that came in 2 days ago. You followed up on them 2 days ago. You didn't hear from them. Here are your tasks to do today to call them. Then if 3 of them answer, great. You set their appointments. Okay, to come in and try an intro class. This is another big one. And this is part of the sales funnel. Intro classes in jiu-jitsu. They make such a difference in whether or not that person signs up at your school. And we can go into that intro class in a second.
Before we do that, and I definitely want to hear about how you structure intro classes. But before we get into that, I just want to add a comment here. One of my favorite things about jiu-jitsu people is they have no fear, or at least they have manageable fear about going out and competing in front of hundreds, maybe thousands of people. They will do incredibly brave and terrifying things. But the idea of picking up the phone to follow up on a lead, they just won't do it. They're so scared of doing it. I have been in rooms with people who are like quite literally some of the best jiu-jitsu athletes to ever have been born and walk the planet. And as soon as they try to sell me something, like they're trying to sell me a $30 shirt, their confidence just evaporates. And it's clear that they are so far out of their comfort zone. I would love to just hear you maybe riff on that a little bit, because I'm sure you agree that this is a common problem. People just don't follow up. They don't engage in the sales process. They don't make the potential customer feel like they're valued or that the person is even interested in having them there.
Yeah. So look, like we script this out. Okay. We script this out for all of our people. Okay. And it's simple. The first thing you do, and it's written, and you train it just like you train doing an armbar. Okay. This is how we train our staff. The first part of, getting on a sales call to set an intro class. Steve, can I get your name, phone number, and email real fast? Oh, thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Okay. That's the easy part. Okay. And you would be surprised on how many people fuck that up, Steve. Like you would literally be surprised. Like no one does that. It's crazy. But once you get past that, the basic information, the problem is people start info dumping. Well, this is when our classes are. Okay. Steve, can you do me a favor? Can you tell me what it is that made you call us today?
I Googled jiu-jitsu near me and you were the first result.
Awesome. And why are you looking for jiu-jitsu? Like, why do you want to train?
Because I want to learn to defend myself.
Awesome. So self-defense. Man, jiu-jitsu is the best self-defense as far as martial arts go. So you definitely made the right choice in choosing jiu-jitsu. Have you ever trained before, Steve?
I've done some aerobic karate before. I'm a red belt in aerobic karate.
Awesome. Well, look, here's where people fuck it up. The learning of any martial art is going to help you really learn this martial art as well. What do you think most people say when they hear aerobic karate? They go, that's bullshit.
They're going to say, yeah, you trained the bullshit. We're going to give you the real secret sauce.
Right. We're going to give you the real stuff. So what I just did was I shit on you for what you've done in your past, right? So that's another big mess up, okay? Whatever they say, I make them feel better about it. You've never trained before? Man, great. This is a great time to start. Oh, you're here to lose weight? Awesome. Okay. Jiu-jitsu is going to keep you sweating and moving for at least an hour, okay? Every time you come in the door. So I don't shit on them for anything. Now, after we go through that, I figure out when do they like to work out. Steve, when do you like to work out, man? Do you like to work out in the morning, in the midday, or at nighttime?
Because of my job, it's got to be like after 6 p.m. at night.
Awesome. Great. So what I would love to do, Steve, is love to get you set up for an intro class there that you can come in and check out the school. You said after 6?
Yeah.
I have an opening both Tuesday and Wednesday today at 6, this week at 6:30. Which one of those works better for you?
Wednesday.
So Wednesday, 6:30. Yes?
Yes.
If you could show up about 10 minutes early so that we can get you all set up with the gi, ready to take that class. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And we'll see you Wednesday at 6:30. Do you know where we're located, Steve?
I don't, but is it on your website?
It's on our website. And also, we're going to confirm your appointment tomorrow, and the address will be in there as well.
Now, you know what I think is really cool about this, Eliot, is you followed up about 5 or 6 times just in that conversation, just to make sure I'm engaged, to take care of the obvious questions. I have seen so many gym owners who will just say things like, all that info is on our website. You can go get it there, right? And that's a true statement. But the problem is it shuts down communication. And sales is often less about the exchange of information, and it's more about establishing a connection so that people want to come in and they feel comfortable coming in.
Everything we do is about building rapport. Every single thing we do is about building rapport with the person. This is why we don't let people schedule intro classes on our website by themselves, because there's no rapport. Think about all the appointments that you will cancel because you didn't, like, man, you feel a little almost indebted to me to fucking show up now, or at least call and say you're not going to come.
Yeah, I mean, that is such a huge problem. I talk to so many gym owners and they say the number one thing that frustrates them is when they get a lead and the lead says they'll show up and they don't. But I think that
it's a you problem.
Yeah, exactly. It assumes that the other person has already bought into this whole thing. Whereas in reality, look at it from their perspective, right? You're just a sales guy they talked to once. And if you didn't go out of your way to make them feel welcome, there's really no incentive for them to come and see you. And so it's very common for people to ghost on their first appearance, right? To not show up. And I think you've done
Well, not for us, no. Look, so we track all of our numbers and we help our clients track all of their numbers. Okay, so most people, what do they look at when they're looking at sales? They look at like, how many leads came in? How many sales did I make? And they say it's good. No, if it's a certain percentage. And that's just not true. It might be okay. Okay. But you have to track at all the stages. How many leads came in? All right. Because you do need a certain number of leads. If you're not getting a certain number of leads, then your marketing is off in some way. Okay. So you got to go fix your marketing. But we talked about that already. So once you're hitting those number of leads, how many of my leads actually set an appointment? That's a really important number, because am I setting good appointments? We allow for a 20% drop from lead to appointment set. How many of my appointments how many of my set appointments now actually show up? Because now we're talking about another 20%, and we're okay with a 20% drop from there too. And then how many of those leads that actually show up to a class close? And again, you're talking about 15 to 20% drop. That's okay. But if you're not tracking in all of those stages, you have no clue where you're dropping the ball. You go, oh, I have a marketing problem. And this is what I said right away. Everyone goes, oh, I have a marketing problem. I'm not getting enough leads. Man, you don't know. You could be getting 100 leads. You just suck at setting appointments and none of them show up. Maybe you suck at confirming appointments. Maybe you suck at the actual sale process. You might not have a marketing problem. And what we find is that most people don't have a marketing problem. They have a sales problem, first of all. Did that make sense?
Absolutely. This touches on something that I've observed as well, which is that when people feel the need to put this info out there, like, where's my gym? What do I offer? How do you contact me? They will think that just having it on their website somewhere is sufficient. And if someone contacts them and says, hey, can I come in? They'll basically just terminate the conversation by saying, yeah, it's on our website. Go here. And that feels like a good thing to do because it's efficient, right? You know, I've created a website. Why should I have to give the same answer 100 times? I'm just going to send them there. But the problem with that, and you see this a lot in software, is it terminates the conversation with the customer, right? I mean, I am prioritizing my own time over the customer's time if I basically tell them, I can't be bothered to make this easy for you or answer questions. I'm just going to send you off to our website where you can then find all of the info that you want. Often it's not about, when you're dealing with humans, it's not about being as efficient as possible, although of course you want to be, but it's about making them feel like they're important and that you have an actual connection. And if you send people into a completely automated funnel without that human touch, often, especially for something that is frankly as scary as jiu-jitsu for regular people, you run the risk of losing them because, I mean, look, if you want to start jiu-jitsu, there's a million reasons someone can come up with as to why they shouldn't train, right? It's a terrifying thing to do for the first time until you come in and you realize it was mostly in your head. You have to help people overcome that. And you're not going to do that by bouncing them off to a website where they can read about your schedule.
People first, dog. It's a principle of ours. People first. And when you take care of people first over everything else, then you're good. Because throwing them to the website. Now, look, if someone's like, yo, what time's class? Can I see your class schedule? I'll throw them to the website, right? Hey, here's our address, 1234 South, blah, 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 blah. You know, if they're asking for that. If you forget it, it's on our website.
Yeah. So anything else there on the sales front?
Yeah, for sure. Have an intro class. An intro class makes such a huge difference. And in that intro class, you show them the damn warm up that they're going to do in the fundamentals class.
The one thing that has always surprised me with jiu-jitsu and businesses and how they run is they always give students kind of the equivalent of a cold open where they just drop them in and they're like, put on a gi, go out there And if it sucks, tap. And that's kind of all they tell you. There's not really a lot of lead in. And, as we've done this podcast over the years, I've talked to a lot of domain experts in terms of like how to bring in the type of people who normally wouldn't be comfortable coming into jiu-jitsu. Like, how do you appeal to the 50-year-old soccer mom? Or how do you appeal to someone who's maybe neurodivergent? And and what I've realized is there's not a lot of expectation setting when it comes to getting people in the door.
What does neurodivergent mean?
Like you're on the autism spectrum, right?
Oh, like 80% of our clients.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, right? You neglect that market at your own peril in jiu-jitsu because that's probably going to be your golden market at some point.
Well, you have to combine that with steroids.
So I hear.
And then you get Gordon Ryan.
Yes. But what I always find surprising, though, is that people will do such a minimal job of onboarding people. Like, I remember when I started jiu-jitsu, and again, this is 2008, I rolled into the gym, they gave me a loaner gi, and they basically said, go out there, and if it sucks, tap. And that was basically the extent of the onboarding that I got.
Most people are still doing that.
Yeah. And at that point, like I said, I was a young, stubborn, single guy, and I'd made the decision I wanted to do this. So at that point, they weren't going to convince me otherwise. But a lot of people would have had a very bad experience if you don't even know exactly what jiu-jitsu is. And again, we have to remember that we live in a bubble. A lot of people don't really know what jiu-jitsu is. They know it's this thing that happens in the UFC, but that's about all they know about it. You throw them in there and people are trying to cut off blood flow to their brains and break their arms backwards. Like, you have to equip people with some context about what's going to happen to them and what they should do. And I'd love to learn more about how you guys do that at Easton.
You have to equip them with a very small amount of context of what they're going to do of that stuff, right? That is mostly the product of your fundamentals class being set up correctly, that it does not scare the fucking shit out of people. So to answer that question, but for example, the intro class, 90% of the intro class is making sure people know how to put their gi on right. Like, hey, fold it over like this, tie your belt, we'll help you tie your belt. And then that they can do the warm up. And the warm-up is the same in every single fundamentals class. Like, there's no difference in the warm-up. At any of the 8 schools that we have, the warm-up in the fundamentals class is the exact same. Because that way our intro class can be the exact same. So when somebody comes in, when Steve comes in, and we get you in the gi and we get you on the mat, and we sit down and we explain to you, hey man, look, the first 5 to 7 minutes of the class is going to look like this. And I'm going to help you be able to get through that right now so that when you go into that class, you feel comfortable in the first 5 to 7 minutes. And then you get real. And then at the end of me teaching you the warm up, I'll show you the basic positions and how to tap. Because now when you go into class and now you're a little nervous again, but you're like, oh shit, hold on. I know how to do this bridge thing. Eliot just showed it to me. Oh yeah, I know how to do this like hipping out thing a little bit. Eliot just showed it to me. It brings your level of anxiety down.
Now, here, I want to ask you something here. When you say you teach them to do the warm-up, what does the warm-up look like? Is it basically just simple movements like you described, like bridging and shrimping?
So we start with some squats, right? Because everyone can do some squats. So we do some squats, then we do a break fall, and then we do bridges to both sides. Then we do some hipping out to both sides. Then we combine bridging and hipping out. Like I bridge, then I hip out. And then I step my leg over and like you turn 90 degrees, like you're putting someone back from side control into the guard. Okay. We show them how to do like a little Kimura sit-up sometimes, like where you sit up on your elbow. We show them how to break fall and stand up. And then we show them how to do a grappler sit-up where you like rock up onto your knee and sit back down.
Now, here's what I want to understand. Why is it that you show them that in advance? Because, theoretically, if they train for a class or two, they're going to learn all of that stuff on their own. Why do you kind of pre-bake that to make sure they know that before they even step into the first class?
Because the first 5 to 10 minutes is when you're the most scared. That's when you get like, oh shit, what's about to happen? And so if you told me when I was fighting that in the first round, I'm not going to get knocked out and I'm not going to get submitted, fighting wouldn't be that scary, dog. But you can't tell me that, can you?
Unfortunately, no. I mean, I could tell you that, but it would be a lie.
Right? Because you can't tell me the unknown. Fighting is unknown. People want to know things. That's what makes us feel comfortable. So if I tell you that the first 5 minutes of your class for the next 3 months is going to look exactly like this, and at the end of a month, you're going to be really fucking good at it, to the point where you could probably help somebody else do it, you're going to like calm down a little bit because you already said you're scared. You already said that most of the people that walk in our schools are intimidated. You already said all these things, right? Like we already know these things. This is just the truth. So like if I can just calm down the first 5 to 10 minutes of their class, for the first couple times they come in so that they feel like they know what the fuck they're doing and they're not like, oh my God, what's about to happen here? It makes everything that now we're talking about retention. Okay. Now they stick around longer.
Yeah. Something that I've realized over the years is many of the things that we do to intro people to jiu-jitsu, whether it's intentional or not, they very much have the side effect of humiliating the student to some degree.
I told you the phone call humiliates them when they say they did aerobic karate. And I say that was bullshit and a waste of your time.
Yeah. And I mean, in jiu-jitsu, we already know that your first few classes are going to be somewhat humiliating, right? Because you're going into a combat sport, you're going to lose. If you walk into jiu-jitsu for the first time and you're tapping everyone left and right, something strange has happened here.
You're not at a jiu-jitsu school.
Exactly.
You're at a karate school that says they teach jiu-jitsu.
Exactly. So the beginning of your journey will always have a degree of humiliation to it anyway. And that is where I think we run the risk of losing a lot of customers. I've said before that many of the things that we do to onboard beginners, especially in their first few classes, really serve no purpose but to humiliate students. The example I often give is at many, many gyms, at the end of the class, in the gi anyway, you line up by rank, right? But this is very rarely explained to beginners. So I've seen this so many times. It's almost a daily occurrence where everyone lines up and the new white belt is on the wrong side of the room, and the instructor stops and points at that guy and says, "You fucked that up, go to the other side." And the poor guy's got to do the walk of shame to the other side and look like an idiot on his first day. Like, what does that serve? What benefit have we given to anyone by doing that?
That's why the intro class teacher then needs to start the class with the intro class student and walk them over to where they need to stand and feel good. And that happens at all of our schools. And that's what we teach people. And we think these things don't matter, but these things greatly matter. Even though we don't let our students train for 3 months live, like just from the knees, go, because it's a humiliating, shitty experience. And you're like, well, I did it, dog. I got through it. Yeah, well, fuck you. All right. Maybe your dick's bigger than mine. What do you want me to say? Good. Congratulations. Good for you. You're tougher than me. All right. Awesome. What do you want? You want 10 students? Or you want a couple hundred students?
Yeah. There is very much a survivorship bias in jiu-jitsu where all of the people who are still around kind of came up in a time where it was a lot more rugged and there were a lot more reasons to quit. And as a result, it's easy for the people who are still around to say, well, clearly this works because look, we all survived. But the problem is, if you think about it that way, you're only looking at the 5% of people who stuck around. You're ignoring the fact that your drop-off rate...
That 95% of people quit.
Yeah.
Imagine if you kept 5% more. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Imagine 5% more of those people when you started doing jiu-jitsu, just 5, a small number, were still doing jiu-jitsu. That's a massive amount. And look, we talked about my student, Anna, who crushed this weekend. She's my most decorated student. She has won a world title at every single belt. And her last 2 belts, she's won every tournament in no-gi, major tournament, at every single belt. She was petrified. She used to walk past the mat looking at me for 6 months doing kickboxing before she would step on the mat. And now she's a fucking beast, dog. She's a beast. So that argument of they'll survive, no, you have to help them survive a little bit. Get over yourselves. Get over yourself and how tough you are. And this is going to lead me into the next piece and how well you teach jiu-jitsu. You probably don't, because you probably haven't studied how to teach, like how to take someone, not how your instructor showed you and not how to show the armbar, but how to take an individual and I'm going to use not nice words here, okay? To take a pussy and make them not a pussy. How do you do that in a way that doesn't scare 99% of them off and only one of them makes it, right? And that's a big deal. How do you teach jiu-jitsu? I don't care if you can show a berimbolo. Man, if you want to get really good at the berimbolo, go get on BJJ Fanatics. Go ahead. If you want to get really good attacking the back, John and Gordon have amazing instructionals on how to attack the back. But that's not what most people want.
And I would argue too that even if they do want that, that is a late in your journey consideration. No one walks into a gym for the first time and says, I'm here because I need you to teach me how to do a fucking bolo, right? That never happens. They may develop a specialty at purple belt. They might decide that this is the type of jiu-jitsu they want to play. But all of that is predicated around getting them to stick around long enough.
Get them to blue belt. Just get them to blue belt. 80% of the people that sign up at your school to blue belt. Can you do that? How do you do that? You structure your class with a curriculum in a good way so that they can progress and slowly move forward and not harp on them every day that when they come in that they made a mistake doing the buck and roll. Again, like what you said, we kick them out. Dog, Steve, when did you get good at the buck and roll?
Oh boy. I don't think there was a single moment, but the point where I really felt like I can deploy this against anyone and I can rely on this as a black belt level technique, probably around purple or brown belt.
Oh, so 3 to 4 fucking years.
Yeah, it took a long time.
It took a long time. Guess what? That's what it takes. The goal of the academy and the instructor is to get them there, is to get them to that point and set things up in a way where they could actually be good when it matters. Nobody cares about the best white belt in the world. Nobody cares about the best blue belt in the world. It just doesn't really matter. And when can you defend yourself against an untrained combatant? I believe that's blue belt. You have to be able to do that by blue belt. But a trained one, man, dog, that's going to be a minute. And we'll sit there and we'll harp on a 3-week student. Like, no, your hand has to be here. No, I said your hand has to be here. No, come on, man. I said your hand has to be here. Dude, give me a break. Dude, are they getting the concept of how to do a buck and roll, of how to do a knee to elbow escape? It's going to be 10,000 more reps for them.
Yeah, that is a very common mistake. And again, I think this comes down to failure to empathize, failure to put yourself in the perspective of the beginner. But I have definitely had many experiences with brown and black belts back when I was a white belt where they would just micromanage the shit out of my jiu-jitsu. They would sit there and lecture me endlessly about whether my elbow was 2 degrees to the left or 2 degrees to the right. And it was so frustrating because I couldn't do shit at this point. I was a beginner, but everything that I did was wrong, according to my instructor, to the point where I really never got a rhythm going in terms of like, I feel like I'm actually able to do this thing. I feel like I'm getting some reps in. And we know that this is the wrong way to teach, right? I mean, this is a realization that many in jiu-jitsu have had right now. The most valuable thing that an instructor can do is keep the momentum going in the class, make sure that people get in quality, safe reps. That's way more productive than trying to make sure that the student gets it perfect at the beginning, because all that does is overload and frustrate them, right? And I think a common mistake is that brown and black belt coaches expect brown and black belt level precision from the white belts, which is just, not only is it unfair, but it also doesn't help them get better.
And it doesn't get better. It makes them quit. It makes them stop doing it. And this is where curriculum comes in. And if you really want to start thinking about growing your school, because let's say you're an amazing teacher. Let's say, man, I'm just the best, Steve. No one can come close to my level of instruction. Well, if that's all it is, then I'm stuck teaching every class. I can't grow. I can't grow my business. I can't affect more people. And this comes back to that conversation that we talked about, that scarcity mindset that we talked about of like being unwilling to have a business. But if you don't realize that it's a business, then you have a problem. Okay. You are just some dude that teaches jiu-jitsu in a building that you owe money on now. If you teach all the classes and you do all the sales, and because nobody can do it like you, Steve, no one's that good. And that might be true, but you're not growing your academy. And the way you make sure that people teach it like you is you film a curriculum, or in our case, we have filmed curriculum for you and for our instructors of exactly how it is that we would like a fundamentals class taught. It is we would like an intermediate class taught. How it is we'd like a beginner kickboxing class taught, a kids class taught, intro class taught, all of it filmed, ready to go, so that Eliot can sit here on the phone with Steve and talk about these things, because at my schools, I know that it's being done correctly because we filmed it.
Yeah. When so many people start up a jiu-jitsu business, they get into this mindset of no one can really do it like I can. I have to be the one to do it. I don't trust that I can delegate this to anyone else because they won't meet my standards. And, maybe that has to do with the kind of rugged individualism that's part of jiu-jitsu culture. But realistically, you see this all over the place, right? In every walk of life.
In every business. Yeah.
Yeah. People are afraid to delegate, and it's an understandable fear. But the thing you have to remember is if only you can do that work, then you haven't really created a sustainable business. Like, you've created a job for yourself, and that's not a bad thing. But if you really want this thing to be sustainable, it has to be such that it doesn't depend on you to sit there and turn the crank and run the machine on a day-to-day basis. And that means that you're going to have to do the work to train people to take it over for you. It means that those people will make mistakes as they learn, just like how we all make mistakes when we learn jiu-jitsu. They're not going to get it right the first time.
Can I stop you here for a sec?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you're right. They're going to do what, Steve? You just said your employees are going to make what?
Mistakes.
Okay, they're going to make mistakes, right? 100%. They're going to make mistakes, okay? And then you're going to have to fall back on your core values. For example, trusting them that they're going to keep learning and keep growing so that they don't keep making the same mistake, because you made the mistakes too, and so did I, and we all made the mistakes. And here, this is a perfect example of where values come back into play. You have to trust them that they're going to agree that they're going to be shooting for excellence as well. I'm talking about Easton's core values, right? And then maybe have a little compassion for them when they make the same mistake that you did, and not just chew them out and tear them down. That is a perfect example of where our core values come back into play when you're dealing with other people, your employees and things like that at your school.
Yeah. I mean, especially if you want them to stay too. And this is something, I mean, maybe we can wrap up with this, but I would love to get your perspective on retention, because this is such a common problem too. People will build up their business and then they'll have people running the classes or running admin, and then they're surprised when those people quit. And I'd love to get your feelings on that. But maybe before we do, one thing I wanted to pick your brain on, you said that one of the 4 pieces of a solid business is product. And you also said that no one in jiu-jitsu is going to want to hear that their product sucks, but it probably does. And I would love to hear you expand on that, because I think that there's so much truth in that statement.
All right, you ready for here's where I'll piss everyone off. Most likely you teach like shit.
But how come? Like, why do people teach like shit?
Because you haven't studied how to actually teach something from other people that are better than us at teaching. Like, where are you paying attention to how to teach? Where are you getting your information from? What books have you read on how to pass information down from one person to another person? It's actually really, really important if you want to teach people, you know?
Yeah. And something that I am constantly fascinated by in the jiu-jitsu space, and I'm sure you've noticed this, is every gym in the world is the self-proclaimed best gym in the area. I've never gone to someone's gym and had them say, you know what, we're the number 3 jiu-jitsu gym in this area. Every gym believes they are the absolute best. And, you know, I'm not going to take away from the importance of self-belief, but I think in this case, there's also a bit of delusion, right? Everyone wants to believe they have the very best product. But the problem is that belief can make you resistant to change because you already think you're the best. And I can guarantee, like you said, you're not the best. You simply are not. There's ways you could improve. And one of the main areas, as you pointed out, is learn how to actually teach, something that is not really done enough in jiu-jitsu. There's people who think they know how to teach, but they often don't. And they really should leverage the experience.
Well, you get a black belt at jiu-jitsu, and therefore, for some reason, we think that makes you good at teaching jiu-jitsu. It's a massive misconception.
Yeah. I remember when I taught my first class, I put basically no thought into whether I was teaching it effectively or not. I just copied what my instructor had always done. And I assumed, well, if you know, my 3rd, 4th degree black belt coach is doing things this way, then surely that must be the way to do it. And it wasn't until way later that I realized this isn't based on any understanding of pedagogy or teaching best practices. It's based on this has just been the method that's been copied over generations.
It's based on how their teacher taught them.
Exactly. And all of that, it comes from a place of just what someone felt was the right solution at some time. But we have better tools than that now. We should be able to tell, you know, how can we make things easier to retain? We've done courses on this about kind of like how you can bring in best practices from pedagogy so students actually retain stuff. And so they get value out of classes. The example I give, and you touched on this earlier, is I would ask people, how many times have you gone to a jiu-jitsu class and the instructor taught some move and you just thought to yourself, like, I'm never going to use this? You know, it's a very niche specific thing. We're wasting a lot of time on some little thing that doesn't really matter. You've got people in the room who don't understand the basic foundations of movement in jiu-jitsu, and you're teaching barambolos, right? It doesn't make sense. And I feel that is a good example of where we're not picking the shots as coaches. We're not teaching the things that really matter. But as someone who builds curriculums, I would like to know how you manage this, how you make sure that the material that you're including is really useful and is actually being retained.
Well, you set up levels. So when we build our curriculums, we set up a fundamentals level, right? So that class, if let's say for my fundamentals class, it happens to be that 10 brown belts show up and 10, this never happens, but for an example, right? And 10, first week white belts show up. The class is for the 10 first week white belts. It's fundamentals, man, right? And when we go, okay, that's just what it is. The brown belts showed up to fundamentals. And when you're building the curriculum, when you're building it, you go, okay, what are the techniques that you need to know in a fundamentals class? And you write them out. Okay, what are the stand-up techniques? What are the self-defense techniques? What are the ground techniques, top and bottom? Okay, you write them out. Then you go, okay, what does the structure of my class need to look like? The timing of my class. Okay, I'll spend 5 minutes here. I'll spend 10 minutes here. I'll spend 20 minutes here. I'll spend 20 minutes here, right? And then you plug and play. This 10 minutes is this 5 minutes is that. And then it rotates. You show the same thing in fundamentals for a week. Every week in fundamentals, it's the same class. Not an A and a B class, the same thing. Intermediate level class, we show the same position. Half guard bottom, let's say 2 weeks, but it's filmed, it's structured, it's laid out. Every year or so, we look at a curriculum, see if we need to update them. Make sense? And then in an advanced curriculum, we have way more leeway. But for an advanced curriculum, we spend minimum 1 month.
And that's very opposite to the way that a lot of people structure things.
I know. I told you most people teach like shit.
Yeah. Something our mutual friend Kabir Bath once told me, which really stuck with me, was that coaches get sick of the things they're teaching much faster than students do. Coaches, because they're in this perspective of seeing everything that happens in the room and they're experienced, they tend to feel like I've got to always be cycling in new stuff and more novelty because my students are going to get bored. But like, I got news for you. Your students probably need 3 weeks plus working on one thing, especially when they're a beginner. If you're cycling through way too many techniques too fast, I mean, they might not get bored, but they will get overstimulated and they won't retain anything.
Look, like I said, fundamentals, 1 week. Intermediate, 2 weeks. Now look, the fundamentals curriculum is 17 weeks. Okay, so it's a 17-week curriculum. You're going to, a lot of, the way we structure our class, you will escape side control every day. You will pass the guard every day in class. It might not be the thing that's taught. Does that make sense? But you'll be getting these ideas. You're going to work from the side clench position and stand up every day. Okay. Every single day. You're going to do one arm pass the guard drills. You're going to do a flow drill. You're going to get up and base. You're going to do these things every single day. If they're going to be hidden in the flows. Does that make sense what I'm saying, Steve? So that you get all this practice, you get all these reps without even knowing you're getting these reps. So intermediate class curriculum is 33 weeks. It's a 33-week long curriculum. And then you get to go to advanced after that.
This all raises a question that I've got here, which is, do you feel like just having like a checklist or a schedule of techniques or things you teach is enough? Because one of the weird things about jiu-jitsu is you have a wide variety of people coming into classes kind of whenever they want. You compare this to another sport like soccer or basketball. You've got a team, they all play together, they all show up together, they all train together. So you can be relatively sure that whoever is in the class now, they were there last week and they were there the week before and you know what you taught them, right? Whereas in jiu-jitsu, it's sort of random. People just kind of show up whenever they want. And I know one of the challenges that coaches can have here is people might have missed something, right? If someone was on vacation for 2 weeks and then they pop back up, they missed whatever you taught during that time period. Do you do anything to kind of accommodate for that? Or do you think it's not really worth worrying about and you just kind of let it shake out at the end of the day?
I'm more worried about making good purple belts. It will come back around in the curriculum.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where like, you get COVID, let's say for 2 weeks, you're out for 2 weeks. Got it. All right. Happens to all of us. Happened to me, happened to you, right? You get sick. This happens, that happens. Finals for kids. For college kids, like whatever, all good, man. It is what it is.
Yeah. I think that kind of comes back to what we talked about earlier. Coaches feel obsessive about, I have to dump all of this information into this person's head or I've failed. But really, if your gym is good and people like being there, they'll be around for the next cycle, right? 33 weeks or whatever is not as long as you really think it is. If the person sticks around, they're going to catch it on the next go around.
You miss. It's okay. And you'll still get good. You ever miss 2 weeks? You ever get hurt?
Absolutely. I'm hurt right now. I'm waiting for surgery. I'm going to be off for quite a while. So it happens.
Sure. It happens, right? But like when you were coming up, you got hurt before, right?
Oh, yeah.
Rolled an ankle, bum knee. You still got a black belt throughout the process.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great example of people thinking too much about the next. And I mean, white belts are notorious for this, right? They worry so much about, I've got to take 2 weeks off. But once you've done this long enough, you realize, look, it happens. Life happens. It gets in the way. Sometimes you have to take time off, right? I mean, for me in the last few years, we had my daughter, we had a pandemic, I'm on a surgery wait list now. There's a lot of reasons why people have to take time off. And the more important thing is, do they keep coming back, right? That's the most important thing is, can I trigger that consistency? It's fine if people are off for a bit because they have a valid reason. But at the end of the day, how do I get them back in? And that actually makes me wonder, from a retention and follow-up standpoint, how do you deal with this? Like if someone just kind of stops coming to jiu-jitsu, or maybe they quit, maybe they did leave or they switched. Do you do any follow-ups down the road to check in on those people and try to get them back in the door?
So the first thing we do is the follow-up on the beginner students on their first day. We do it, it's called 2246. We follow up with people for 6 weeks, every 2 weeks, except for the first 2-day one, to make sure that they're doing okay if they need anything, right? So we really follow them through their 6 weeks journey. Make sense? The second thing we do is, especially at our smaller schools that, the under 250, let's call it under 300 member schools, we do DNS, did not show. Like if you haven't been here for 2 weeks and we didn't know about it, like if you're like, yo, I'm on vacation or, blah, 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 then we leave you. We're not going to call you, right? We're going to make sure we'll wait and see. But yeah, so again, you need a CRM for this. You need to pull a list and make sure that people are coming. And if they're not coming, then You go from there. You make phone calls, you send emails, you send text messages. And look, when I explained our follow-up system before, it's phone, email, text. It's not just make a phone call, okay? It's phone, email, text until we figure out that person's mode of communication, and then we stick with that one.
It's an interesting realization I've had because as the person running the business, often your first thought is, I don't want to annoy people or be a spammer or bother them. But the one thing that I have found quite surprising is how much people actually really truly appreciate it when you do follow up with them, right? It makes people feel valued. Yes, there will be people who get mad and say, don't contact me. You know, those people were probably never going to be your customers in the first place. And it's sort of my feeling that, look, if someone really doesn't want to train there, you can allow them to self-select out. But for the people who are interested, what I have found is that those follow-ups, they make a big difference. Like I remember when I was earlier on in my journey, I had an injury or something. I can't remember what it was, but I had to take like 2 or 3 weeks off. And I didn't tell anyone. I just disappeared because I knew, 2-3 weeks, I'll be gone. And after 2 weeks of being gone, I just got a personal note from my coach, just checking in to make sure everything was okay. Right? Like no pressure, no sales tactics, just a reply to be like, hey, we haven't seen you in 2 weeks. Is everything all right? And I got to say, like that meant a lot to me because I know that at the gym I was at before, I could have disappeared for 6 months and they wouldn't have noticed. They would only notice when the credit card started bouncing, right? But when an instructor actually takes interest in you, that is sort of how you build a relationship. And so I know people are sometimes afraid to follow up with lost leads or cold leads because they don't want to come across as a spammer. But for legitimate leads, often they will really appreciate that. That has at least been my experience.
Look, even for cold leads, they can opt out of your email funnel. They can say stop and then you stop. Like it's okay. When you're going to go buy a new car, right? You're going to most likely, for some unknown reason to you, go to a certain car dealership. And that will be based on somehow that they stayed in the back of your mind for the last 5 years, let's say, since you bought your last new car. That's just how it works. And you have to realize that's how it works. It doesn't work differently.
That's an important thing to consider too, which is that jiu-jitsu is a very unusual thing to try to sell people. And I think where people often make a mistake is they try to bring in marketing and sales strategies that are geared for a very different type of product. You talked about advertising on Google versus on Facebook, right? There's a lot of stuff you can sell on Facebook where that might be a great place to advertise. I mean, if you're selling $20 widgets or if it's Temu or something, then sure, put it on there because that isn't a purchase.
If you're selling products.
Yeah. And also there's a question of there's certain types of products that people might not even know they want, but then they see it pop up in their feed and they're like, man, that's a good idea. I want to get one of those. Jiu-jitsu is usually not that type of product, right? You are charging people a significant amount of money. It's a monthly subscription and it's a scary ass thing to do as a hobby. So you will likely be getting a different type of customer who's in a different type of mind space. And I think that's why it's so important, like you said, to stay active in their space. Because if at some point they were interested in jiu-jitsu and then they fell off, right? If you are able to stay in their orbit, then at some point when they decide, you know what, I do want to give this a go, you'll be the first person they think of. I see this a lot.
And now look, that is where social media does come in for jiu-jitsu. Like we have massive social media presence at all of our schools. We just don't do social media advertising. Like we have a cadence of how it's 3 stories, it's 3 posts a week, it's 3 stories a day. Like that we have a cadence of a team that runs social media at each one of our schools. And so like, I don't mean to say that social media, for example, isn't important because yes, I do want a prospective client to maybe go follow us, right? And then see what we do. I know it's going to take a minute for them to for us to nurture that relationship. And social media is a way that you do it. So I'm not saying when I was saying like we don't advertise. Yeah, we don't advertise on social media, but we have a massive presence. There's a Easton TC, which is like the main account. And then each school has their own account as well. Very local focused. So now look, this has taken years and years for us to develop and learn how to do. But again, we call that our product. So this comes back to the fact that you have to realize your product might suck and you need to fix it. Okay. And the way you fix it is you gain information from people that do it better than you. So like when we put this curriculum together that we had this program at Easton Online, we didn't take this from like other jiu-jitsu schools. We were like, okay, who sells great? I'm going to go learn how to sell. All right, we learned how to sell. Okay, who does marketing great? Okay, I'm going to go learn how to market. Who does culture great? I'm going to go learn how to do culture, and I'm going to read books on culture and how you build culture at businesses and in a school and all this stuff, and you take from the best in the world. You go, there's so much information out there. You take from the best in the world. And then look, you can't just do it exactly how they do it. You have to mold it and shape it a little bit to how Jiu-Jitsu does it, right? To how it's going to work for your business or Muay Thai or whatever it is. You can't just copy and paste, but this takes work. If you want to run a great jiu-jitsu school, it's going to take as much, if not more work than it did at getting a black belt. And but it's different work. And our problem is most of the time our egos get in the way that for some reason, we talked about this when we were at Paul's, we think this black piece of cloth around our waist, because it was so hard, because so many people want it and when you give it to them, they cry and they're like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And that might be really true, but it doesn't mean you're good at anything else other than doing jiu-jitsu. And for some reason, we think it cross-pollinates into everything. All of a sudden, you know about politics. All of a sudden, you know about health. All of a sudden, you know about this and you know about that. No, man, you only know about these other things: sales, marketing, culture. If you actually took some time and studied how to do those things, that cloth means nothing other than the fact that you're good at jiu-jitsu.
Well, I think this is a perfect segue then, Eliot, because one of the hardest problems that people will have, like, it's all well and good to say this, but most jiu-jitsu people, they're kind of terrified at the prospect of going down this journey, and it's easy to retrench and just focus on the jiu-jitsu. But there are solutions out there, right? There are products and platforms and services that you can leverage to kind of build a business in the box and get up and running. And of course, I know that's one of the things that you guys do. If people want to leverage your experience, you guys have an online system that'll teach people how to do this. Why don't we take a second to plug that? Because I think that will be of interest to anyone who's stuck around this far. Clearly, they're interested in this kind of thing.
For sure. Look, first, I want to say we're not one of those systems back in the day, like Lloyd Irvin ran, where it was like, hey, you pay me $15,000 and I'll fix your school. Yeah, no, we don't believe in that. So we'll start there. We have this done, right? And we will literally take you, if you're at 0 students or if you're at 150 students, no matter where you are in your process, we have our systems, and not the systems that we think work, or not the systems that have worked at like this one school that I ran because like I can do it. No, these are the systems that we use at every single one of our 8 schools to basically do all the things that we talked about today, Steve. Sales, product, culture, marketing. Okay. And we help people go from whatever stage they're at to whatever stage they want to be at. And we just go up and up and up. And I think, Steve, on the platform here with you, we're going to give away one of our products, one of our very basic level products, so that you can see for free, right? Like, how do they do this? How do they teach an intro class, or how do they lead follow-up? And then we're also going to have with BJJ Mental Models, like a very small sales course, right? Like the sales, it's actually not that small. The sales course that's in this bigger curriculum that we have, we're going to have this connected with BJJ Mental Models with you guys. Not expensive. How do you sell at your school? And this is really, really important. How do you do an intro class? And then how do you follow up with leads and sell them? Man, it's so important. And then if you want more than that from us, you'll be able to contact us and you can do our entire program, which again, I told you was going to break the bank at like $15,000. It's $199 a month. It's one student. And if you have a jiu-jitsu school, I'll be super honest. I say this all the time. If you have a jiu-jitsu school and let's say you've been established for a little bit and you have over 100 members, if you don't have $199 a month to work on your business, then you shouldn't be teaching. You shouldn't have a jiu-jitsu school.
Well, amazing, man. I will put links to all of your stuff in the show notes. And like I said, and like you said, we're going to be probably adding some collaboration there. So even on our platform, we're going to have some of your gym material for helping people get off the ground here. I think that this is an area that I really want to help people with and help focus on, because for so many people in jiu-jitsu, they fall in love with this. They want to make a career out of it, but they're not really equipped to do that. There aren't many places out there where you can really actually learn how to think of your jiu-jitsu business as a business. We focus so much on the technique side of things. We don't think about the 90% of stuff you have to do if you actually want to run this as a business. And you guys have produced some of the best and most consistent content to help people in that regard. So I'm really happy to be able to help promote some of that stuff. Again, I'll put links to that in the show notes. I will also put a link to all of our stuff Everything we make lives at bjjmentalmodels.com. The majority of what we do is completely fully available for free, being our full-length podcasts, our mini episode, the newsletter, our database of concepts. None of that costs you $1. If you want to go up to the next level with us, that's what BJJ Mental Models Premium is for. Getting close to about 600 subscribers now. Join that, and what you get is access to the world's largest library of audio courses for jiu-jitsu concepts, strategy, tactics, all of the stuff that's really hard to actually cover in video. I think we've really come up with a clever way to provide that info, similar to how Audible or Masterclass would do. And of course, you can go up to our coaching tier, and then quite literally, we've got some of the best black belts in the world who can give you direct feedback on your rolling or comp footage, mindset advice, competition game planning, basically the missing pieces of stuff that you might not get if you're just in your own gym and you haven't expanded your ecosystem beyond that. So all of that's at bjjmentalmodels.com. My stuff and Eliot's. We'll put all of those links in the show notes. But Eliot, buddy, thank you so much for doing this, man. This is a blast.
Thanks for having me on, and that was great.
Most welcome, buddy. Thanks to the listeners as well. Always appreciate everyone hanging out with us here, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care.